Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Sports is really unique. There's not many businesses where, you go to New York and it will be very difficult for a financial advisor on the fifth floor to go upstairs and talk to Jamie Dimon and have a conversation with him. But you can do that in sports. You can go talk to, Mark Lazary. You can go talk to Mark Cuban, some of the most successful business people in the world. You have direct access to them. And so why you would not utilize those opportunities makes no sense to me.
So Larry Fitzgerald, this is another one we've really had circled on the calendar. 17 years as an Arizona Cardinal, college football Hall of Fame inductee this year, certain first ballot Hall of Famer for the NFL, and an incredibly successful businessman already.
And everything you just said, Jason, is the least impressive thing.
Yeah.
It's really who this person is as a human being, a humanitarian, right? What he does in philanthropy, his relationships, his EQ is off the charts. And this is a guy that in business has become a titan. Larry and I have gotten to know each other very well over the last, dozen years or so. And I think he's going to be even a more successful businessman than he was wide receiver. And that's saying a lot because he's one of the all-time greats.
And one of the biggest choices he made was to really root himself here in Arizona. He gets close with the late John McCain and really truly embeds himself in this community in a way that feels like has made an exponential difference for his impact.
Yeah, and he's a believer of going narrow and deep.
Yeah.
But the fact that he made a conscious decision to stay right here, be loyal to one market, to one team, pretty phenomenal.
So it's interesting because as he's built this portfolio, he's made some, venture type investments. He's on several big boards. Qualtrics he's on the board of, Dick's Sporting Goods. These are big public company boards that he is really contributing to. He's invested in things like Infinite Athlete. My favorite, chess.com. You play chess?
I love chess. My favorite game.
And what's so fascinating about that is he's played since he was 7 years old. And then he sees the business opportunity. He looks at this global potential for it. And so it is this combination of his personal interest, but also very, very sharp business acumen as well.
So many things that I'm really interested to unpack over the next hour. On this episode of The Deal, Larry Fitzgerald.
All right, well, let's start by having you introduce yourself and what you do.
My name is Larry Fitzgerald, and I would say I'm a serial entrepreneur. I don't like to box myself in any one way. I'm always looking to grow and learn. I think I'm just a student of life.
Is that how you thought of yourself even as a kid?
I would say that I don't know if I thought of myself like that as a kid, but I would say I was described that way as a kid. You know? I would even be reprimanded by my teachers for asking too many questions. Often I was the kid. I was that kid. So how does it work again? So if you did it this way, would it work that way? So I was always that. But I was never afraid to ask the questions. If I didn't understand it, I want to understand it.
Yeah.
And if I don't ask, I'm not going to get the information I need.
It's interesting, Alex, being here in Arizona, like your dad, I'm a journalist. So I have a lot of respect for that. But, like you, love asking people questions. I know you do this too. Mm-hmm. My favorite people to ask, taxi drivers and Uber drivers. Mm-hmm. So, of course, last couple of days here, I'm like, Larry Fitzgerald, what do you think? They're like, oh, that's my guy. But what's interesting is they say, that's my guy. And he is out everywhere. You're deeply embedded in this community. So I want to talk about Arizona. You come to play here, but you really choose to make it your place. Why?
Yeah, and I'm not saying this to disparage anybody else in the way they go about their business, but I think the younger generation, they're really short-sighted in how they look at their careers, right? And I always wanted to kind of think about a 40-year plan as opposed to a 4-year plan. Yeah, I could go over here and chase a ring there, but there's no way I would be able to have a deep, thoughtful relationship with the city and the people there. I can go to the Boys and Girls Club here, and I've had a relationship with them for 20 years. Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Zion Institute of Education. I can go on down the list that I've known the CEOs, board members for decades, and we have a relationship that is not transactional. They understand it. They see me in the field. They see me working, in terms of real estate development. You talk about restaurants, government relations, like all of those. I have great relationships here. It's because I've been here for 20 years, and they've seen the good. They follow me during the bad, and they see that I'm loyal, and they've shown me the same loyalty. And I just don't think I would have been able to do that if I would have bounced from city to city to city. Arizona's given me everything. 17 years, they'd helped me live my dream. Now I'm going to spend the next 50, 60, God willing, years I'm here on this earth, giving back what I feel like I've received. And like that was my thought process at 20 years old. It's my thought process at 40, and hopefully it'll be my same thought process at 60.
Yeah. I was reading about the College Football Hall of Fame, and even the folks at Pitt were talking about this. One thing just caught me was this idea that every time you scored a touchdown, just handed the ball to the official. Like there's this like mindset that you have always had that is even, it feels like. Where does that come from?
Well, I come from a family of a bunch of educators, and I'll take you back to a story from my grandfather. My grandfather was one of the leaders of the Kappas, fraternity. And I remember I was probably like my second or third year, a couple of years I've made All-Pro, and I went back to Chicago to see my grandfather, and he was there with a bunch of his friends. They were there doing a fundraiser for, something I can't remember. And my grandfather's like, I want you to meet my grandson. And I was like, yeah, okay. So he brings me over, there's a bunch of like 15 guys, and he's like, this is my grandson, Larry. He's the only grandson that I have that doesn't have his college degree. That's how he introduced me. No, seriously, that's how he introduced me. So like, it didn't matter what I was doing, how many touchdowns I caught. Education is something that's important to this family, and you're the only one that doesn't have it out of your cousins. So I need you to get that. They always had a way of like letting you know, like, sports is great, but you're gonna make your greatest impact with your brain. And so like that was always something that was kind of drilled into us at a really young age. And so I really appreciate my career. I don't want to take anything away from it. I set out to do it, and I was able to achieve great things. But sports was just another chapter in the book.
Larry, let's talk a little bit about Minnesota. I bought a home there. I love it. Tell me about growing up there. I mean, who were some of your favorite sports teams? Yep. Some of the people you looked up to, and tell me a little bit about the people of Minnesota.
Yeah, Alex, you hit it on the head, man. I think, you hear Minnesota nice quite often, and I don't really notice it until there's like certain things. You go to New York and you go to California, the pace is just like much faster. You go home and you see a lady pushing her bags, she's walking out of, Cub Foods, it's a local grocery store. And like, you see people like rushing to her to help her put her bags in the car.
Yeah.
Growing up in Minnesota was like truly a blessing for me. And I have so many fond memories. Some of my mentors like Kirby Puckett, God rest his soul, Hall of Fame center fielder, MVP. Like, he would invite us by the house for Thanksgiving. I would go to the park. My dad, media interviews were done before in baseball games, very different from like basketball.
Yeah.
And football would happen after. They go and talk to the media before the games. And, I remember Kirby Puckett for a 7:00 game would be at the park at 11. Be at the park at 11, taking pop flies, because the Metrodome, you played in the Metrodome.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you hit it up into the roof, the white ceiling would, cause a lot of problems with you seeing it. And Kirby would do it 100 times before every game, 12 o'clock in the afternoon for a 7:00 game. And so like, I just saw the dedication, the commitment to excellence. He's been playing 10 plus years in this building, but he never took it for granted. Right. He worked on it every single day. And like that attention to detail really resonated with me. Chris Carter, who was, widely known as the guy who had the best hands in the National Football League.
Right.
And I was thinking, why does he have the best hands? And I would see after practice, he would catch 200 balls every day.
Right.
All of these little, nuggets that I would see that my dad was able to let me see. He exposed me to these opportunities. And it was great to be 10, 11, 12 years old.
Oh my God, that's a dream.
Why Kevin Garnett was different.
Yeah.
Practice starts at 9 and he's there at 6. In a full sweat before practice starts, when these young guys are walking in the gym and he's 12-year veteran. I mean, like that type of commitment to excellence was things that I saw every day.
Last week, speaking of teachers, and one of the big themes is mentors.
Yeah.
And I saw your father just a couple of days ago. He was at a Timberwolves game. Very respected, Mr. Fitzgerald. He says, "Tell my son I say hello." I was like, "Yes, sir."
Yeah.
What impact did he have in your life?
I mean, my father and my mother were the catalysts, for everything. And my mom and dad, they worked two opposite ends of the spectrum. My dad, sports journalist for 44 years now in the Twin Cities area. And you name it. I got a chance to be around Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, Kirby Puckett, Mark McGuire, and then on the Vikings, Randy Moss and Chris Carter, and the list goes on and on. And then my mom was in the non-profit space, and she worked primarily in HIV and AIDS and breast cancer fields. And so there was times it was really difficult to internalize some of the things that I saw, at a young age. I mean, from the age of probably 7 to 18, I probably saw, no exaggeration, 30 people lose their lives to complications of HIV and AIDS, and also losing their lives to cancer. And so it gave me a really interesting perspective on life. I saw the balance. I saw how great it can be if you work really hard to achieve your goals. And then I saw also the human side where, life can be very difficult, and it could be a lot of times things that were out of your control and circumstances you couldn't control. And so I think it helped me develop a really strong empathy for people, understanding everybody's different walks of life. And, I think it just made me a more compassionate person.
Larry, so I've talked to Jason a lot about this. Like, I'm a byproduct of some great mentors, Magic Johnson being one of them. I remember 25 years ago, he took me out to Mastro's in LA, and it was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting. We sat for like 3.5 hours, and he literally gave me this playbook. And I still have notes from that. Mentors, we talked about your father and your mom, obviously. That's where it starts. Any others that you've tried to resemble over the years, or people that have had a big impact on you?
So many, and I would include you in that. And Magic Johnson was similar to me. I met him out at the McCain Institute 14 years ago. We were on a panel together about sports, and after the panel, he spent 30 minutes with me. There's so many people around him at the McCain Institute. And he gave me his undivided attention. He told me, Larry, you have an opportunity right now when you're playing, to really maximize the relationships that you have. And he pretty much told me every city I would go to, I would reach out and have lunch. And I did the exact same thing. I go to Dallas, and, I would sit down with Mark Cuban, invite him down, and try to get as many teammates. I could go to New York, and John Waldron from Goldman Sachs would come talk to us. If I go back even further, in 2007, I was in New York, just at a random New York Knicks basketball game. And I'll never forget, this guy came up to me, introduced himself. He said, "Hey, my name is Frank." I said, "Hey, Frank, nice to meet you." He said, "I've been following you for a long time." I said, "That's awesome." He said, "My daughter went to Syracuse while you were at Pitt. And, I think you have a really bright future." I was like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm 24 years old. What does he mean I have a bright future? I'm like, I'm just starting my career. I'm in my 4th year. He was like, "No, I think you have a bright future after you get done playing." And I'm thinking, like, I hope I play a lot longer. Like, what is he talking about? And he said, I want to delve deeper into this conversation with you. He gave me his business card. We ended up staying in contact. His name is Frank Bisignano. He's now the CEO of Fiserv, largest data processing company, credit card processing company in the country. He was the COO at the time at JPMorgan.
Right.
He ended up inviting me to do an internship in New York in the middle of the football offseason. And I'm thinking, man, it'll be a lot more fun probably to go train in LA or Miami, do something fun, right? And, but then I started thinking, like, man, this is a really unique opportunity. I'm in the classroom with, Dartmouth and Harvard and Stanford and Yale and Ross and, you name all the great schools. These kids are all there. And I've never been as intimidated as I was sitting in that classroom, because I wasn't like formally trained like a lot of the kids. But, after the week, I felt like I had so much more confidence in myself, because like, yeah, they might be trained specifically to be bankers, but like they were kind of linear in how they thought.
Yeah.
When things kind of changed, they didn't do a great job of adjusting to certain things. And like, I feel like that was kind of my strength, bringing people together, collaborating, helping people with their confidence. And those same things I was applying as an athlete, I could do that in the business world. And so I think it gave me a real jolt of confidence that I could venture off and do some other things. And that's kind of where it started. And I started doing internships every off season, real estate development, venture capital, private equity, mezzanine funding, philanthropy, learning about different foundations. And that would have never happened if Frank never took me aside and challenged me, because nobody had ever challenged me from a business perspective. Like, you need to start thinking about this. And you need to start thinking about it right now at 24 years old. And, I really appreciated that, because like, fortunately enough, I was able to play until I was 37. But Alex, how many great athletes come and they have all the promise in the world, but one bad step, blow a knee out, or a great pitcher that's got unbelievable command and doesn't have Tommy Johns and never able to regain what they had in the past. So like time is of the essence if you think about it, because we're on borrowed time. Like, you can play 22 years if God blesses your life, but in reality, that's not going to happen for most, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you just have to be proactive in how you approach mentorship and, just be open to it.
Well, one mentor who I believe, was local to you here and obviously had a big impact was John McCain. You spoke at his memorial in a very moving way. I mean, tell us about him, because that's not a match that necessarily people would necessarily come up with. Arizona, obviously, in common, but tell us about that relationship.
Yeah, so I met him at a fundraising cocktail reception. I'm not a political person. You want to turn people off, you start talking about politics, and half the people, they're going to be walking out of the room in a minute. And so, I met him, and he was so kind and generous with his time when I met him the first time. And I knew who he was, but I didn't really know who he was. And, he was like, hey, are you busy, in the next couple of weeks? I ended up having a coffee with him, and we just started building a relationship. He used to always try to get me to get involved in politics. I was like, Senator, that's not my steez. That's not my steez. But I love getting to know you. And his heart, man, I remember coming back from DC one time, and he used to fly commercial. He wasn't flying back and forth on private jets. And every single person that walked up to him, he made time for that person, shook their hands, looked them in the eyes, ask them how they're doing. Are you happy with your job? Is there anything I can help you with? Literally, it took us an hour to get from the gate to the baggage claim. And that was because every single person he made time for. And I was like, man, I'm 27 years old. I'm multiple All-Pros. I need to start thinking the way he does. And, then you look at some of the things he did while he was running for president and how genuinely thoughtful he was. And I just really admired the way he went about his business and how authentic and intentional he was about his relationships.
And so when you sort of weave all this together, all these experiences, and I'm so fascinated by that Frank Bisignano story, what does that sort of either unlock for you, or how does it help you kind of create your, for lack of a better term, sort of business mindset?
Yeah, so my business mindset, I wouldn't say it is this is what I'm going to focus on, right? And there's things that I do spend more time on, and hopefully as I go further on into my business career, that I'll be able to focus even more on some of the things that I'm really, really passionate, angel investing, venture capital, which I really feel like I can make a sizable impact with the relationships and the people skills that are required to build a company at scale. But I love multifamily, similar to Alex. I really enjoy the restaurant space, which I've gotten involved in. I enjoy sports and sports tech. There's a lot of different buckets of things I really enjoy that I feel like I can bring value to. And, as an investor, I think the biggest thing you can do besides writing a check into something is to actually bring tangible qualities that actually help people around you and your business grow. Similar to what Alex is doing in Minnesota, right? Those young Carl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards and so many of these young guys, they have somebody they can just pick up the phone and call. Hey, Alex, I'm dealing with this off the field. What would you do with this? There's not many owners or governors, in professional sports that have his type of experience. And so that's something that he's involved in. He wrote a check to be involved in, but he can actually bring, great mentorship to young people who need it.
Yeah, they're hitting you up.
They should. They should.
They're great.
They should.
Yeah.
They should.
Yeah. Did you do that as a player? I mean, were you
always?
You had that sort of relationship here.
Yeah. Michael Bidwell was very good to me. Robert Sarver, very good to me. Jerry Colangelo, former owner of the Phoenix Suns and the Diamondbacks, very good to me. And I would always try to find those guys and be able to talk to them and help understand what they saw in sports and where they see sports going in the future and things that they would do differently if they could, turn back the clock. Sports is really unique. There's not many businesses where, you go, to New York and, it'll be very difficult for a financial advisor on the fifth floor to go upstairs and talk to Jamie Dimon and have a conversation with him. But you can do that in sports. You can go talk to Mark Lazary. You can go talk to Mark Cuban, some of the most successful business people in the world. You have direct access to them. And so why you would not utilize those opportunities makes no sense to me.
Coming up, we discuss Larry's transition from football to the boardroom and his commitment to making an impact through philanthropy, plus how his love of chess became an opportunity for investment.
Larry, another thing we have in common is the NBA. But it's ironic, right? Because we've been talking about Magic, both of our mentor. And he played basketball and owns the Dodgers, right? You played football and you were part of the Suns, and same with baseball and Timberwolves and Lynx. When an opportunity like that comes, how does it come? And like, how do you think about the process of like, I got to write a big check and you only have so much capital. Walk us through that process. How do you think about it?
Yeah, so I never really like set out to be in the NBA. That's not nothing I was ever like really thinking about. But I just built a relationship over 10 years, with the majority owner. And one day we were sitting at dinner, and he was just like, "Hey, Larry, I would love to have you a part of my group. You're really thoughtful. You're insightful. I mean, you have great recommendations and this and that." And I was like, "Wow, that's interesting." And then he said, "This is what it's going." And I said, I kind of gulped up my water. I said, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. But it's a decision I really am thankful that I made because, like, I would say, as a minority owner, like, I was able to get kind of behind the curtains. I was a part of the draft process. I understood. He opened up the books for me. This is what we spend money on. This is what we try to cut cost on. This is every aspect of the business. Like, he was very open to letting me learn and see it, and it helped me make a more informed decision on the Rajasthan Royals opportunity. In India, in the Premier League in cricket. It helped me make a better decision in pickleball.
Right.
It helped me make, better decisions in all of those type of opportunities that presented themselves to me after that.
Pickleball, fascinating. You are a player, an owner, and an investor. Cricket, you mentioned as well. Let's talk about cricket for a second. Like, how does that come to you, and what's the process?
I have a friend here, Cal Sumani here locally, big angel investor, founded 3 companies that do, critical infrastructure work. And he's from India. And, he was like, "Larry, there's an opportunity that, I really would like you to look at." And so I was like, "Cool, Cal, let's look at it." I didn't really understand cricket.
Yeah.
I've been to cricket matches before in India, still never really could understand it. But what I did recognize when I went was the fandom. And you think about teams here in the United States that are in very small markets. You think about, the Oakland A's, you think about the Green Bay Packers, you think about the Buffalo Bills, still great organizations that are thriving in really small markets. And you think about that concept in India at scale, this league could easily be 40 teams.
Right.
It would not saturate the market. So just thinking about the exponential growth, who's watching it, how much is followed, were all, big components in why I wanted to be involved.
Is there one or two in particular that you're really excited about, that you feel more connected to one of these companies you've invested in?
Yes, a bunch of them. Yeah, a bunch of them. But if I had to pick one, and it's a passion for me, like chess.com. I mean, like, it's unbelievable how fast the game has grown. And it was very organic how I kind of got involved in the game. I started playing when I was 7 years old. I went to the doctor. They said I had ADHD. And before, my parents allowed the doctors to put me on any medication, they said, let's look at some other pathways so we can explore. And, one of my after school counselors said, "Hey, look, chess is a great game. It helps slow his thought process down and start helping him be more of a strategic thinker, kind of help him, really kind of like just be thoughtful in how he makes decisions." And I was like, chess, wow, how's that going to help me? But I started playing. I fell in love with it, started competing at a higher level. I started getting into some of these city chess tournaments, and like I was hooked.
So Larry, how does this passion kind of bridge into an opportunity to invest in a company like this?
So it was a passion initially. I was playing out in Long Island with a friend of mine, and one of his friends came by, and we were playing Bliss Chess. He was like, "Larry, I got to introduce you to a friend of mine. His name's Danny Wrench. He's one of the co-founders of chess.com. And, I was like, cool, and like everybody else during the pandemic, everybody's watching all these series around the globe, and Queen's Gambit, was one that I was like infatuated with, right? And so I saw like there was really great opportunities, and I really like the fact that it's an international game. I look at games that are scalable, that people will enjoy, and that they will pay a premium for.
It is this amazing collision of both technology, because I mean, you go on the app and, and I know lots of people from CEOs to, reporter colleagues who they'll go on and play these 3-minute games like every day. They'll be, on hold for something and they'll pop into a game. And yet it also is this very thoughtful, almost analog type of game in a digital world. It's amazing. So with all the things that come across your desk, you talked about sort of bucketing things, as I know Alex does too. Are there any that got away? Things you wish you had done?
I think it's any regrets. Yeah, there's opportunities that I decided not to go against. But when I'm doing my diligence process on deals, like me and my team were pretty convicted on why we do it. And sometimes there's good deals that you pass on because they just don't fit
right
at that particular time, right? Not that they're a bad deal, but they just do I have the wherewithal to really do it at the level that I want to do it? Not every deal is for everyone.
Right.
You know, I think people get FOMO a lot and make decisions like, this is hot and we need to do this. And like that's not for me right now.
Right.
And so I think we're really good at that as a team as we evaluate opportunities as they present themselves. And we both come from teams, you know, baseball, football teams. And like, Alex, how often did you ever, when you went to the clubhouse, when you were getting ready for the game, ever worry about your cleats being in your locker or the right bats being, you know, ready for you, or your glove being oiled up the way you needed to make, you know, throw guys out at third base or any of those type of things when you performed? Like, you never thought about those.
Never. Not once.
And they were just taken care of because, you know, the clubbies were doing this, and never worried about the spread after the game if you were going to eat because you knew the meals were going to be there. You never worried about the buses would be on time to take you from the hotel. It was a coordination of a lot of things. And I think when you leave the game as an athlete, you forget how much teamwork was required to allow you to be great at what you did. You know, you just think, you know, I ran the route, quarterback threw me the ball. Yeah, that's one thing, but you know, the coach had to design the plays for you. You know, that field had to be manicured perfectly for you. Somebody had to make sure, you know, your pads were taped down so guys couldn't hold you and grab you throughout the game. You know, like all of these things that you never think about. You know, the trainers that get your hamstrings loose and get you ready to perform every day. And, you know, I didn't really appreciate that when I first walked away. And, you know, I struggled a bit kind of finding, you know, my groove initially.
So Larry, I can relate with that because post-retirement, the first 3 years, I really struggled trying to find my way.
Mm-hmm.
And I gained a bunch of weight. I wasn't feeling as good. And I've been doing one thing for 25 years professionally. And then you're just like, it's like those CEOs that retire from like Goldman Sachs or JPMorgan. Once you leave that, you know, you don't have that card anymore. You feel like a little bit of on an island by yourself. I certainly did.
Yeah.
And then I made a really big paradigm shift after COVID with my schedule. How does your day look like today, obviously, versus how it used to be for so many years?
When I first got out, I would say the first year, it wasn't a lack of opportunities. It was definitely a lack of structure. You know, I was very similar to you. I was accustomed to be a very structured schedule. And I wouldn't say I love structure, but I thrive with it, you know? And so like not waking up in the morning and kind of like, hey, what am I going to do today? Am I going to, you know I got to pick up the kids from school at 3, but am I going to play golf? I was a ship in the ocean with no destination. And like, that was a very lonely feeling. And so like, I needed to get the structure. And once I got the structure, I feel like I developed the purpose. And then once I got the purpose, I feel like I was able to find the things and outlets that really like suited me and I wanted to be a part of. And, you know, you talk about being a CEO, like they have a natural off ramp though, you know, because you leave CEO, now you're the chairman. So you're still working those business mindset and thought and processes. As an athlete, there is no off ramp. There's the 1% that gets into TV, that can do it, that has that ability, but that's for very far and few between. Hall of Fame, quality, caliber player that has that opportunity, and everybody else kind of has to figure it out. I try to help a lot of guys when they do make that transition. Like, this is what you need to be thinking. This is what you need to do. And trying to just kind of give them the blueprint, as Alex would say.
And so how does it go forward? I mean, you're a young guy at this point. You've been able to have a number of different experiences from Wall Street, you know, internships and team ownership. Like, is there something that's on the horizon for you? You know, do you want to go back to team ownership? Is there a big thing out there that you're chasing, or is it one step at a time?
I literally take it one day at a time. My accounting team always like, look, Larry, we got 191 K1s last year. Like this is a lot to manage. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, you know, but like, it gets me so excited when new opportunities come along, and, you know, and it goes back to like my first venture deal. You know, in 2013, I was taking executive business courses at Stanford. Like I always am, I had like a 2-hour window, and I started walking around campus. I just wanted to, I went to the student union. I saw some kids over there. They were like working on something together. I was like, what y'all doing over here, man? My name is Larry. They didn't know who I was. They didn't care who I was. And I was like, what are you guys working on? They were telling me what they're working on. It's like, so like, do you guys have a space that you say, oh yeah, this is a Stanford incubation lab, former students that are now on Sand Hill Road, they're at Bessemer and Andreessen Horowitz and you name it. They come back in and they help the students. And, if the idea is good enough, they invest in it. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Then I met a former student athlete. He was a kicker named Derek Belch, and he had a company called Striver. It was a VR company. And, his original thought process for it was to be able to help athletes kind of learn outside of what the traditional learning was. You just watch tape from a really far distance and practice, right? Right. But you can't really see the angles, and so they set up cameras around you to watch you run a route. So I can see, hey, Larry, you're dropping your at the waist too much. You need to drop your hips as opposed to dropping your waist. And you can actually see it, from a 360-degree angle as you watch it. And so like it really helps you with the nuances of route running and where your hands are. I saw your eyes, the ball was coming and your eyes were already looking away. Like that's going to come back to bite you. Like let's focus on that. Like you can focus on like the minuscule details. Yeah. And like I really liked that application. And then I, made introductions to him and I saw the business start growing. He got a relationship with the Big Ten. He got one with the Pac-12 and multiple NFL teams, used it. And so like I saw that my ability was not only just to like see a really interesting, cool deal, but I could add value to the founder. Right. And like, that's when I really started saying like, man, this is something I really enjoy. Like you get a snapshot at something in its infancy state and you get a chance to kind of like help it scale. Right. Got me really geeked.
You mentioned this sort of in passing, but I want to dig on it a little bit. You're on some boards. What's the perspective that you bring?
Yeah, so I mean, when I first was asked to join the board of Dick's, Ed came to me and he said, "Look, Larry, I'm not looking for another retail person. I'm not looking for a banker. I know that's not what your expertise is, but we don't have anybody who's coming from your perspective. So I just want you to be authentic. I want you to learn like what I've done, study, go on diligence, take some classes to familiarize with board governance, and like you're gonna get better at the other things. But I need you and your insight as a former athlete to give me that insight." And so like he's not, they don't ask you to do things that you're not capable of doing at the time. I'm not saying you can't grow into them, but it really just takes somebody like giving you a chance, to be in a space that you maybe thought that you would never be able to be in. And now I sit in the room and I'm a lot more comfortable. I have a lot more insightful thoughts because I understand the business now after 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah. It's funny that now I'm picturing like how you described yourself as a kid, raising your hand and being like, well, hold on a second.
Yeah. And I tell you the first couple board meetings, I remember getting off and thinking, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? And it was during
yourself. You're thinking that to yourself.
Because it was during COVID. And you've sitting in board meetings before. Yeah. Watching doing a board meeting on a Zoom is very different from me sitting next to a board member and saying, "Hey, Manny, he's been a CEO of a retail business for 25 years. I can look at him and ask him, I didn't really understand that. Can you help me? Can you help me understand why we're doing a convertible note? Why do we need to draw down our line of credit? I don't understand that." And he can literally tell me right there in a Zoom meeting. Right. I can't ask these questions because I would be disruptive to the meeting. And so like I needed to be in a more intimate setting in a boardroom where I could do those and have the side conversations after our committee meetings. And so like once I started doing that, I felt like I was interesting. I was actually, gaining process. But the first couple, I was like, whoa. Yeah. You're sitting around listening to conversation to people who have been doing this for 30, 40 years. And, you're stepping into that arena.
As we start to wrap up, come back to the Arizona of it all, because you make this very conscious decision that this is your place. I'm sure you had chances to go elsewhere, and yet you stayed here very successfully, obviously. You talk about a 40-year plan, but it's one thing to make a plan and it's another thing to execute it and to really stick and to stay here. Why?
Well, for you to stay at a place for a long time, there has to be a joint effort. Like the player has to want to stay. Ownership and coaches have to want you, and there's times where they felt like they could have got, value out of moving me, but they decided not to. And there was times that I was up for contract and I could have left, but I didn't want to. And I think after a while, the organization and the player, you start to understand like this is a marriage that we want to make last. When we were in lockstep at that point, it became a relationship that wasn't just transactional. And in sports, most relationships are transactional. You look at the wins every day, you look at the losses, and if the losses start adding up, then they make a move. And I think we were able to move past that. We were able to look at, like, what do you want the face of your franchise to look like? Do you want it to be a consistent presence in the community, as a person that plays every game, that shows up, gives great effort, is a good teammate that you can build around, that's not a selfish person? Like, that's one of the reasons that we were able to have like a really good 17-year run.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen that obviously in organizations and players, gelling with the organization. I dare say we don't see it as much anymore. And I mean, certainly you see it from the NBA perspective, where the movement is unbelievable. I mean, I feel like your case is increasingly rare. Does it feel like that to you guys? For sure. But I think as a player, I think it's changed a lot, especially in the NBA. Guys that come in one day and like, I'm not happy and I want to move. And you have to do it because, like, if a guy has another year on his deal and he's not going to resign, you have to be able to get the value. Like, you have to, as a business, you have to do that. And I think you see that a lot more frequently in basketball than you do, in football and in baseball. The players have a lot of power. And, I think it's also a big way how the leagues differ. You think about the NBA markets the player first, then the league, and then the teams, right? In the NFL, it's the league, it's the team, it's the player. And so, like, the league is always going to do what's best to protect the shield. And then the teams have the brand loyalty amongst the community, and the players are kind of interchangeable. Right. If you have a top 10 player in the NBA, that player can kind of determine pretty much whatever. I'll play tonight, or I'm not going to play tonight. I will play with this guy. Like, even if you trade another one of his teammates, like, I don't want to play with him, you can't make the move because they're not going to gel. So just to give you the whole scope of yourself, you're a Minnesota Vikings ball boy. Then you're going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame as of this year. You are undoubtedly going to be a first ballot NFL Hall of Famer. Did you imagine that was going to happen? I wouldn't say I imagined it. It was always a hope and a dream. I didn't start off thinking I wanted to be a Hall of Famer. I want to be able to have the opportunity to play. And I think, as your ability grows and your opportunities grow, I think your vision and your aspirations start to grow as well. And I think that they went in sequence. You've sort of downplayed the Hall of Fame, it feels like, over time. Is that just who you are? None of it's in my control. Yeah. Like, it's so subjective. You look out and, there's guys that you say, like, they put together a Hall of Fame career and they should be in, and they're not. And then there's guys who, are shoo-ins, like, but it's media members that essentially are determining, what they think of your career. And as a society, I think we've really kind of like gone away from, like, consistency is not something that people value anymore. It's just he's a money manager and he did 60% last year. Oh, that's great, but we're in a bull market. I would expect him to have success. Like, the guy that does, loses 2% in a bear market is a guy that you like. That's the guy I want managing my money. Yeah. You think about guys like Warren Buffett, who's a friend of Alex's as well. I mean, he's just been consistent for 60 years. And, like, people don't value that as much. I mean, it's interesting to think about, especially where you are now, where you were as an athlete. Obviously you were in that milieu with your father, and then, philanthropically, your foundation has done a tremendous amount, and interestingly, I think, in a very focused way. I mean, you really locked in on cancer research and other elements. I mean, clearly there's a straight line from your mom there, right? Yeah, very, very straight line. And also, like, as I've gotten older, I feel like I've gotten better at kind of like being an inch wide and a mile deep with the foundation. I think it's really easy to kind of get sidetracked because there's a lot of unbelievable foundations doing great work in our world, right? And there's a lot of people that need help. But in reality, you can't be everything for everyone, right? And so I feel like if I really narrow down in education and after school activities and programs and bridging the technology gap in underserved communities and schools,
I feel like I could make a tangible difference in that area, right? And if I do the same thing in breast cancer, with our mobile mammograms and taking them in communities where historically there has not been great dialogue and communications with healthcare, being able to bridge that gap to help them understand, like, these health professionals are here to help you. Let's get you in for these mammograms. You don't have to come in. We'll come to you, and so like doing those individual things, I think has helped me, realize that you just need to focus in on the things that you're really good at. And I'm saying that there are not others causes that are important, but for you to be most effective and also be able to galvanize your donor base. Like when you show your progress and your impact reports, like these are the things that we did in the month of January. This was what we had hoped to do. We achieved that. And this is why we think, we would be a great candidate for another grant this year. It's like we need to show tangible impact results.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Larry, you're one of the most iconic players of your generation. What advice would you give to someone who wants to excel at life the way you've been able to?
Very easy. I say follow Alex Rodriguez. I mean, you've done an amazing job of obviously having one of the best careers of all time, but being thoughtful in how you help people, the advice, you always make time. I text you, call you, you call me back, email, like you're very kind in how you go about your way, approachable, and a constant student of life. You want to get better and improve. And I think if you take a lot of what Alex has done in terms of his mindset, I think you will have a lot of success during your career and also post-career.
Well, I think a lot of people would say the same thing about you. I think that's that's fair to say. We really enjoyed this. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir. Always.
The Deal is a production from Bloomberg Podcasts and Bloomberg Originals. The Deal is hosted by Alex Rodriguez and Jason Kelly. Our producers are Victor Iveas and Lizzie Phillip. Our story editor is Siddhartha Mahanta. Our assistant producer is Stacey Wong. Blake Maples is our sound engineer. Rubab Shakir is our creative director. Art direction is from Jacqueline Kessler. Original music by Blake Maples. Casting by Dave Warren. Our managing editor is David Ravella. Our executive producers are Sage Bauman, Jason Kelly, Adam Comiskey, Kelly LaFerriere, Ashley Honig, Trey Shallowhorn, Kyle Kramer, and Andrew Barden. Additional support from Rachel Scarmazino, Elena Sausangelis, Vanessa Perdomo, Tom Connors, and Anna Mazarakis. David Dominguez is our director of photography. Our camera operators are Graham Merwin and Edward Hernandez. Our gaffer is Craig Fleming, and our grip is Tim Knight. Alex Diaconis is our video editor. You can also watch The Deal on Bloomberg Originals, YouTube, and Bloomberg Television. Subscribe to The Deal wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.